Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580, 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. We'll answer them here on the air. And, of course, if you don't have a legal question, you just want to give us your opinion on something a court's done recently, something in the law you don't like. Maybe you feel you've been wronged. Got a phone call today from somebody who was being hassled, as they described it, by the police. And, of course, they weren't arrested because they didn't find anything. But this person explains to me, pulled over for the light over the license plate out last evening, forced out of the car, patted down, car searched, all without their consent. Of course, they didn't find anything. And it's the same police department that we had a caller call in a while ago about people climbing up ladders into a house to intercept some underage drinkers. And apparently there's a video of that somewhere. So, again, if that caller who called in about that video could get it to me, I would much appreciate it. I keep hearing the same thing about this particular police department who will go nameless. And so if people are having experiences out there with the police, get them to me so I can figure out what you need to do. Because, they can't they can't pull you out of the car, pat you down for no reason at all, and search your car for no reason at all. And I know one of you out there is like, well, I don't care. I'm not doing nothing wrong. I'm all fine with the government going through my car whenever they want because I'm not doing nothing wrong. Well, guess what? The Constitution says they can't. Little problem called the Constitution. See, back in the old days, these redcoats would ride up alongside you, pull you off your horse, frisk you, maybe take any of your food, might stop by your house and decide to quarter themselves there and stay for a few days, help yourself to your, I guess you didn't have a refrigerator back then, so to your cupboard or your pantry, and maybe help themselves to your 16-year-old daughter, too. That's why government is restrained, and that's why they should remain restrained. 540-0580 if you've got a legal question or you want to talk about this, 540-0580. But here's my point. My point is they can't just get you out of the car. They can't just search your stuff. They can't just rummage through your trunk. They've got to have probable cause to arrest you, and they've got to either have your knowing consent to search, which you should never give. Why would you give? If you have nothing to hide, don't give them consent. If you have something to hide, don't give them consent. Don't let the government think it's their job or their business to nose through everything you own whenever they want. In fact, in Alaska, for instance, they can't search your stuff without your express permission. So when your luggage is on the airplane and you're puddle jumping around, or you're in your own home in Alaska, or even your mail in Alaska, they can't search it without your permission. And the reason for that is the Alaskans are so distrustful of government that they don't allow their own government to search them, unless they give permission. So I don't know if Pennsylvania will ever do that. I guess down here in the lower 48, we've given up a few more of our rights than historically has been given up in Alaska. Hawaii, I think, is a little farther to the left entirely, so we won't lump them together with Alaska. 540-0580 if you've got a legal question, want to talk about a divorce, a child support matter, personal injury matter. I've been working on some personal injury cases lately, and I've had a few people in bad auto wrecks who have limited tort insurance. And if you have limited tort, I want to remind you, get rid of it. Make sure you have full tort insurance. And make sure you don't waive stacking as well on your UIM, UI, which is the uninsured motorist coverage. And make sure you have that as well. If you've gone to your insurance agent and said, give me the cheapest policy possible, what you've basically done is make it so that you aren't covered when something happens to you. You may still have coverage for the other guy, but you've left very little for yourself. And I can think of a case one time where I was involved. And again, if you want to weigh in, 540-0580. I was involved in a case where a fellow was paralyzed, and he was riding with somebody who was uninsured. He didn't know that at the time, but he got in the car with somebody who had no auto insurance. And he had no uninsured, underinsured auto insurance, meaning that he didn't have a policy that would follow him around, that if somebody else hurt him, he could collect from. And even if he'd been driving and he had that, he could have collected from it. So you've got to make sure you have this UIM/UI insurance. And you should never sign that down. That's the coverage that goes to you, not to the other guy. And it just drives me nutty. People are like, well, I didn't understand what that was for, so I signed it down. And interestingly, a lot of times, people aren't explained what these coverages are for. And if you have a good insurance agent, they're going to go through these things with you. But you shouldn't buy on cost. You should buy on coverage. Chris, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Chris?
Carl, thanks for taking my call. I have a question about expunging a record. I have a summary offense on my record from, back when I was in college.
Okay.
And I was wondering, is that something that I can do on my own, or should I see an attorney to have that done?
It's something you could do on your own. And what do I mean by that is, I guess it's not that complicated, but what you do have to do is put together a petition that contains all the pertinent information as well as all the expungement data that's necessary, and prepare the order for the court to sign, et cetera, et cetera. So the way I look at it, it's sort of like me changing my own oil, okay? In theory, I know how to do it. I know I got to go buy a filter. I probably have to buy a wrench to put the filter on and off with, I think. I probably need blocks or something to get my car up on so I can get underneath it. I probably need something to catch the oil in. So I could do it. And it probably wouldn't be that hard, but I'd have to end up spending a lot of time gathering a lot of things and a little bit of money on things that I would never probably use again. So
if I were to hire an attorney to do that, how much would that cost me roughly?
I can tell you exactly what we charge. I've been charging $400 to expunge those. And that fee, it's fair. It covers my time to prep it. There's a little bit of a filing fee, depending on the county. And once in a while, the judge wants to have a hearing on it. And, of course, that's your insurance of having an attorney is if it does go to hearing, you've already got me involved, and I can go in there and say, hey, here's why. Sometimes the district attorney's offices will oppose those. And there's been some question because the way the new statute reads that you can now do summaries that you were convicted of more than 5 years ago. And it says you can't have been arrested or convicted since then or within the last 5 years. And, of course, there's always a question of what that means. And so some district attorney's offices have taken aggressive stances on it. Most on the summaries just let them go.
Okay, but that's something your office handles then?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I'll probably be giving you a call on Monday then.
All right, Chris, just let the ladies know you talked to me on the air, and they'll set us up.
Okay, all right,
take care.
Bye.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. When we get back from the break, we'll talk to the other Chris who's on hold. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Got Chris on hold. Chris, I'll be right with you. 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions, and I'll answer them. It's the 9-year anniversary of September 11th, and I'm sure just like myself, every one of you can remember where you were when you got the news. I was actually driving to play golf in Oak Island down in the Carolinas. And I remember hearing the radio station just sort of changed. 1 minute you're listening to some country western music, and the next minute there's news coming through, and you just know something's wrong because it's just a music station. And what can I tell you? It's been a long time now, and I think we've accomplished a lot. But one thing that's really upsetting to me is that we have not yet rebuilt Ground Zero. And I don't know why we haven't done that. I guess there's a lot of politics and whatnot. And I blame the presidential leadership under both parties and the congressional leadership under both parties, because if I was in charge, we would have 5 towers there with one really tall one in the middle pointed in a certain direction. Because I think it's important that we rebuild that area. And I'm kidding a little bit about that, but I think it's important that we rebuild to show that they didn't win, that the extremists are not going to prevail. And, of course, I think we should probably also hunt down and kill Osama bin Laden once and for all as well. And I don't know why we haven't done that yet either. I thought we were a little more far-reaching and powerful than this has made us look. And I think that's why we have to get a better face on it. And that's why those towers need to be rebuilt, or something needs to be rebuilt there appropriately. So that's my 2 cents worth, and since it's the 9th anniversary, I thought I'd throw it out there. 540-0580. Chris, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good.
Hey, as I was calling, just to give you a story about 2 weeks back, is I was pulled over in a small town here in Pennsylvania that the fella had pulled me over for having one of the tree air freshener things hanging from my mirror.
Right.
I understand now. I talked to someone and they told me that it is illegal, that I would need to have something as small as a quarter hanging.
Who told you that?
Is a lawyer, actually, here in Lancaster.
That's absolutely wrong. In fact, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania has rejected again and again, and in fact, in the most recent opinion, said the ubiquitous pine tree air freshener, the police officer has to literally believe that it would materially obstruct your view and that they have suppressed DUIs because of that being used as a stop again and again. And that's been rejected wholly by the courts. You cannot pull a car over simply because there's an air freshener or other tiny item hanging from the...
I didn't think that it would be illegal, because as soon as he did it, I asked him what I did wrong, and he told me I will tell you what you did wrong here in a second. And not only did he take my license, he took my passenger's license with him also to run both of our names, and then had another cop creep up on the other side of us. So as soon as I left, I went straight to their local police station, and then asked if I could speak to one of their supervisors. And the fella that was creeping up on the side of my car was the fella that I had to stand there and wait for about 15 or 20 minutes to talk to. Said that was their supervisor or chief or whatever. And he told me that I could look it up in the Pennsylvania DOT manual, and it is illegal for me to have that thing hanging from my rear view mirror.
He's absolutely wrong. I can find the Superior Court case. In fact, if you do me a favor, go to weekendappointment.com. Post just sign up and post on there a little ditty about what happened to you, and I will post a citation to the cases. What happened was the Superior Court threw it out once, and then the law enforcement tried to come under the vehicle code, under the Pennsylvania code, and say, well, it's a violation of the code, not just the statute. And the Superior Court sent it back and said, no, it's the same language. It has to materially obstruct, and if a person has a minor bauble, and they actually reference the air fresheners, and they call them the ubiquitous pine tree air freshener. You know, ubiquitous means everywhere, in case anybody's wondering.
Right.
So my point is no. And actually, I love when I get those cases when the cop says that. And that's another reason why it's important to see a guy like me early. If you had been charged with something, I can get the police officer under oath in the first hearing to say that's the reason he pulled you over. He's going to lose every time.
Yeah, and what he told me is I was not charged with anything. Is what he did is he went back and ran both of our names and found out that neither one of us are doing anything illegal, or have any warrants or anything. And he came back and he told me that the reason that he pulled me over was a courtesy stop, is because that was illegal for me to have hanging from my mirror because it blocks my view.
And the really reason I really want you to post on Weekend Appointment, if you could, and put that on there, and just put the name of the police department on there for me. And I'll send them a letter along with a copy of the case, so that if they do it to anybody else, they can be sued for violation of civil rights, because they'll have the case law in hand and know that they aren't allowed to pull you over for that.
So that would be Weekend Report.
Weekendappointment.com.
Weekend Appointment.
Yep, .com.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day.
540-0580. John, you're on WHP 580.
Hi, hello.
What's going on?
Yeah, I have a question about DUI. What do they call them? Stops, the random stops they do.
The checkpoints.
Checkpoints. That's it. What can they ask, and what do you have to answer?
I always say name, rank, and serial number.
Because they stopped me. Said, "Oh, we're doing this to help keep drunks off the road. Where are you coming from?" So I told him down the road. He said, "Where down the road?" I said, "Just down the road." I'm kind of upset. Yeah,
well, here's what they want you to say. Ready? They want you to say exactly where you're coming from, exactly where you're going, so they can use it against you. Mm-hmm. So if you actually go to weekendappointment.com, I've posted a tape on there, the police where they pulled me over, and that's the first thing the police officer asked me. Where are you coming from? I'm not going to answer that. Where are you going? I'm not going to answer that. He wants me to say from a bar or something else that will give him a wedding reception, something that will give him some probable cause to believe that I may have been drinking, so that he can continue to weasel his way into arresting me or otherwise detaining me for further investigation.
Well, I know a lot of things have changed. I'm retired law enforcement, so things have changed since I used to do it. So I had a receipt in my hand, so I said, yeah, I'm coming from I named the bar. I said I had a beer and I had a bunch of chicken wings, and I showed him the receipt. He said, oh, okay, go ahead.
Gosh. I see, and you're like you had the receipt.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just happened to have it in the car. So I didn't really want to make any hassle with Pennsylvania police. So I said, yeah. I said, I'm coming from the bar down the road. I said, I had one beer and chicken wings. So here's the receipt. And I showed him the receipt. I
know the state police were running one time, and a guy I know who's a local police officer, the state police officer stuck his head in the window, and he just rolled his window right up and caught the guy's hat in there, and then they yanked him out of the car and got all upset. And, of course, at some point they figured out he was another police officer. And then they're like, well, why didn't you just say you were a police officer? And he says, I told him. I was like, you can't just stick your head in my car. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I was just wondering what they can, because Pennsylvania got some weird laws that I'm finding out.
Yeah, and the long and short of it is you don't have to answer any of those questions. In fact, we had a caller on here recently who refused to get out of the car and let them move the car. He finally backed down, but they had no right to detain him. They didn't have any reasonable suspicion to believe criminal activity was afoot. They just were trying to tell him they were doing it for his own good. And, of course, then they let him go after that.
Yeah. I knew if they'd done it, they would have blown very low, not even at all. So I just said, all right, here's what I did.
Yeah. And, of course, here's the next question is, I remember being in a car, and I think I was the passenger, and I was fairly intoxicated. And I remember going through the check stop, and I remember the driver, who was my brother, telling the police officer, you've been drinking? My brother's like, oh, just a little bit, but he's been drinking a lot. And the cop looks at me and goes, yeah, he did drink a lot. You can go. They could tell we had to designate, we had picked one guy for the evening to be the sober guy.
So pretty much they can't just really, they have to do it based on your actions and stuff, right?
Yeah, at that point, that random stop is just enough for them to make a little bit of drivers. They can ask you for your driver's license, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But other than that, answering any questions, you don't ever have to answer any questions. But the problem is, and the reality is, most officers get upset when you don't and start to, my favorite was the affidavit of probable cause I once read that said, they told me I couldn't search the car, which gave me reasonable suspicion to believe criminal activity was afoot, so I searched the car. And, of course, that wasn't going to fly, but I was kind of struck by the fact that somebody finally wrote the truth down, The fact that he refused made me extra suspicious.
One quick question before you go. Can you tape record conversations in Pennsylvania? I know you can't do phone calls.
The short answer is you cannot intercept oral, A-U-R-A-L, communications without the consent of the other party, if there's an expectation of privacy. And so the courts have ruled that, for instance, there's no expectation of privacy in a police officer's stop. So, yes, you can tape that just as he can tape you. And also you can also videotape it. So we've had a few cases over the years where people videotaped those and the police tried to arrest them for it, and the case laws come out very clear. There's no expectation of privacy. So I've actually thought that it would be nice to patent a little device of some sort of camera recorder that sits in your car secretly and records all those police interactions.
Well, they have them. That's what they use in the sting operations for narcotics.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you go. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Let's see here. Who's next? Frank, you're on WHP 580.
Yes, yes, sir. I was had a knock at my front door one night after my wife and I had got home from dinner, and there stood a policeman and two policemen, and they said someone was following you and said that you went across the yellow line twice in the distance of about half a mile, and you must be drunk. So I said, well, who would that be? I said, they said, well, I can't tell you, but it's a person in this area. I said, well, that's interesting. I haven't had a drop to drink since 1970. I said, I bet you can't say that. He said, is that your car in the garage? They must have peeked in the window. I said, yeah. They said, well, can we look at it? I said, no. I said, look, if you want to look at the car, fine. I said, I have no problem. I haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
And so they ascertained that, without giving me a test, that no, I had not been drinking. My wife and I had been out celebrating my birthday. It was in March. And so they called in with their little microphone that's stuck on their collar to the office and said, well, there'll be no actions here. And so they left.
Right.
And I thought about it later and then about 20 minutes later, I had to go move my automobile outside. And I went out, and here there was a second cruiser sitting there with another guy in it, and the chap who talked to me was leaning in the window. I mean, they sent two people out to worry about someone who's sober on a report that I had crossed the yellow line twice. One of the comments I made to him made him laugh. I said, I bet you crossed the yellow line just getting here at least twice.
Right.
I said, people touch that yellow line. And I thought about it later. That is harassing. Because here's why.
Well, Frank, I'm gonna tell you. You want to really hear something funny?
What?
If they had said to you, "We want you to take a breath or blood test,"
Yes.
and you had refused it, PennDOT would take your license for a year, saying that the police officer had a reasonable basis to believe you may have been driving under the influence. I've had these cases where they come up to somebody's house saying somebody said that the person who lives here was driving drunk a little bit ago. And that's enough for PennDOT to take your driver's license if you refuse to cooperate for an official breath test.
You don't mean it, honest to God.
Yeah, that's the point we're at right now. Now, fortunately, it sounds like
Now, wait. Now, they ascertained that I was not drinking, however they did that. Well, why did they check the other chap for making a false report? Now, one of us wasn't telling the truth, wasn't accurate.
Well, the short answer is because probably they were just hoping to get another DUI bust because that goes towards their numbers. I just had a client pulled over recently, was being transported, and said that the police officer was bragging on the radio that he now had two more DUI busts than his competitor was another guy at the department. And he heard that on the radio call up front. So there's a competitive thing going on out here with these DUIs as well. I got to go to break, Frank.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the story.
Thank you.
540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Okay. Well, we were talking about DUI stops and all that good stuff, so if people want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. 540-0580. Jim, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger.
Good afternoon, Carl, again.
Hey, what's going on?
Well, I got a different question for you.
Yeah.
I'm about to buy a piece of property in township up here towards Harrisburg, and it is on a sewer and well. They have access to septic right out in front, but they're not currently hooked up. And I would think that you would agree that it's not a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before they send me a letter saying I have to hook up at my expense.
Correct.
One, how do they do that? And two, how can you not? I don't want to be on it. I'm happy with my septic and happy with my well.
Well,
City Hall on this one, Carl.
Right. The answer is, and I've looked at this many times, both for Bob Durgan and a couple times for private clients who wanted me to analyze it. The statute that empowers municipalities includes language under the municipal township codes, et cetera, for them to establish water and sewer and all those kinds of utility systems, and then to require mandatory connections and tapping fees. And so the legislature has many years ago authorized this. And so if you live in a municipality, your only real, and of course we all live in some municipality, your only real option is the ballot box. But here what they say basically is you're going to get something for the benefit of the property. We're putting the system in, and we're going to bear the cost, and we're going to charge you to hook up to it. The theory being you're going to be the beneficiary of that, and I understand you're perfectly happy, and I can tell you that we can debate that all day, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, public water, public sewer. Nonetheless, they have the power from the legislature.
So you'd have to pretty much unpack it and reverse it.
Yeah, and that's never going to happen because here's the reality: is no public work project would ever get done if you gave individuals the power to approve or disapprove. Because even if we had a great, and I'm just making this up, but let's assume all the bridges on the river fell down one day, right? And somebody says, well, I think we should put a new bridge up, and we let everybody who would have to be involved in the funding of that bridge have a direct voice in it. We would simply say, what magic number, what percentage of the population on each side of the river has to want to pay for a bridge before it's allowed? And right now we just say the majority through their elected representatives. Mm-hmm. You could imagine if we required the actual true democratic decision and we didn't even allow majority rules, maybe it was a supermajority or something, or even just an absolute majority or an absolute unanimous requirement. Before we're not going to spend any person's money without their consent. That's fine. Then I don't really go to Harrisburg very often. I don't need a bridge across the river. So then one guy could say no. So that's the theory here is, where do you draw the line? And the theory goes the representative, democratically elected town fathers, who nobody knows who their town fathers are, by the way, my little editorial there. Everybody knows who the next Supreme Court nominee is going to be and who the president is. But the guys who can cost you the most money are your own township supervisors, borough board council members, and all those local politicians, because they're the ones who set the zoning and the water and the sewer and the management plans and the stormwater management plan and da. So at the end of the day, when you're buying or selling your property, the guys who can most directly affect the value or literally take money out of your pocket are your local politicians.
I think I have to get on the board of supervisors.
Yeah. Well, if you do that, you could absolutely prevent a mandatory tapping. Of course, you got to make sure there's more than one of you. You got to have the majority vote, right?
That's right.
All right, Jim. Thanks for the question.
You bet. Good resourceful show. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you.
So much. You bet. Bye-bye.
540-0580. By the way, folks, if you're calling now or you've been trying to call and couldn't get through, remember from 3 o'clock on, from 3 to 3:45, we leave this phone number open, 540-0580. And you keep calling in. We'll be recording the bonus podcast show, which will be aired tomorrow on the Ticket 1460 at 7 a.m. Also be made available online and on weekendappointment.com, and I'll also probably put it on Facebook. So if you're not a Facebook friend of mine, look me up and shoot me a request, and I'll put you in my circle of friends here. But remember, 540-0580, you can call now and get your question answered live on the air, or you can keep calling from about 3 till 3:45, and I'll keep answering your questions and discussing legal issues with you. Rob, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Carl.
Yeah.
This is domestic an issue. I'm a plaintiff in a support case, and I got a notice from the domestic relations that my ex-defendant has an enforcement conference this month. It's stated on there that I do not have to attend, but I'm encouraged to do so. Will I have a voice at that in your experience or not?
You're the person who's getting the money, not the person who's paying the money.
I would really like to be, yeah. No, I'm not. That's why I think why we're doing the enforcement conference. And again, the first part, do I really need to be there to miss another day of work?
No, you don't.
What happens there?
You're in at the enforcement conference. They're going to talk to the person who's not paying and say, "Why aren't you paying?"
Okay.
And let's work things. But the answer is, are you being there? The squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of theory.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can help. It shows interest, etc. In reality, I doubt it's going to change the result, because if the person's willfully not paying, they're probably going to eventually contempt them anyhow. If they have some reasonable reason why they're behind, your presence isn't going to help with that at all.
Okay.
But if you're not happy with the result of this one, in other words, there's an enforcement conference and nothing happens, write an angry letter and say, hey, what's going on? And if that doesn't work, write an angry letter to the judge for your case. And if that doesn't work, show up at the actual contempt hearing down the road. And that's where you'll be, mano a mano with the judge, and you can say, hey.
Okay, she didn't even show for the actual support conference. She called in. which
Right.
I thought was illegal as well, but apparently not. If she does not show up this, will she immediately be put in contempt without question?
Well, they can set up a contempt hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on your hearing officer, your county, and all this, what their tolerances are. But lately, I've noticed central Pennsylvania counties are getting a little harsher and faster on the gun. Although the reality is, I think they're working harder now because there's so many people who have legitimate reasons why they're not making money. And Rob, let me use your question as one little quick dropping off point here. If you are somebody who's paying child support and you've just lost your job, or your unemployment's running out, or you lost your job but got a better one, or actually one that doesn't pay as well, more pertinently, don't just wait around and not pay. Make sure you go into domestic relations right away and let them know what's going on, because one of the things is I get a lot of clients who are in contempt who wouldn't be in contempt if they'd simply gone and modified it because they had legitimate issues.
Sure. Well, her pending issue, from what she states, is that she's too depressed to work. And well, now that depresses me because now I'm raising 2 kids without any support.
Right. Yeah, I'm too depressed to work too, but somehow I get out of bed and go. I mean, come on.
Exactly. But that's what she is. So I appreciate your time, Carl.
All right, Rob. Thank you very much. 540-0580. Let's see who's next here. Amber, you're on with Carl Rominger.
Hi, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Actually, it's a little story. My husband, about 7 years ago, was in a grocery store. It was about 11 o'clock at night. When he went up to pay for the pizza he was buying, 3 police officers approached him, grabbed him, slammed his head off of the counter, and handcuffed him. They proceeded to take him outside to the parking lot. I don't believe anyone was around. When they got him to the parking lot, they searched him and said that they got a call that he was shoplifting. When they searched him, they didn't find anything on him because he wasn't shoplifting. He told them, I didn't do anything, I didn't take anything. Then all 3 of the police officers proceeded to punch him in the head, slam his head off the back of the police cruiser, basically just took turns beating him up. Then threw him in the back of the police car. He was angry, said, what are you doing? I didn't do anything. Why would you hit someone with handcuffs? Why don't you fight me man to man? Well, the police said, you can do one of 2 things. Now you're getting a terroristic threats charge. You can either plead to the terroristic threats or plead to the theft charge, even though they didn't find anything on him.
Right.
Now am I allowed to say what town this happened in?
I mean, I don't care.
Okay, well, this happened in Middletown, and I have heard from countless amounts of people that this is happening to them, where the police are unjustly hitting them, macing them. This has been going on for years, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. I don't think... He
didn't plead guilty to anything, did he?
He pleaded guilty to the theft because he didn't want to have the terroristic threats on a police officer charge, even though he didn't take anything and didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And this is just going on for years now, and no one can do anything about it. I mean, how do you prove that? What do you do about corrupt police officers?
Well, and that's the problem. What do you do about corruption? And anytime there's corruption, now I want to be clear. I mean, this isn't the normal thing. This is the problem where you have somebody who's going to cover for somebody else or lie about something. And if somebody wants to call and say, Carl, this stuff doesn't really happen, I've got videos that prove it happens. I'm thinking of a case right now I have with a certain police department where there's an affidavit that's not anywhere close to reality, and they're going to get hammered on it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, he has to stand up and fight. And these days, now that was a while back, these days there's a lot more video out there. There's a lot more resources, and the police themselves are videoing themselves, which protects both sides.
Yeah.
But Amber, the answer is he should have just, I understand he says he had to plead guilty to avoid the terroristic threats charge. He probably, people have to stand up. And once enough people stand up, the courts figure it out and go, wait a minute, there can't be 20 people all saying it's all made up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, who do you contact to get someone to help you, fight on your side with this thing?
Well, he should start with your defense attorney and then make sure that you also look into your potential civil cases as well, which would be a 1983 action. But for your husband, it sounds like more than 7 years ago, all the statutes have passed.
Yeah.
All right, Amber, I'll let you go and go to break here.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. 540-0580. Carl Rominger taking your call. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. And remember, we're going to keep the phone lines open from 3 to 3:45, so you have 45 minutes of time to call, and I'll keep answering questions that go on the bonus podcast. If you don't get through, you get the busy signal. That means all our lines are tied up. Shane will take you and put you on hold when you call in. But if you get the busy signal, just try back in about 5 minutes, because we only have 3 phone lines that we can keep live at any given moment during the podcast. Like I say, if you get busy, and we're going to keep taking the calls from 3 to 3:45, and of course the next 10 minutes here live on the air. Dan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. I was driving on 2nd Street this morning and got a speeding ticket or a citation summons. As near as I could tell, they just looked at me and said, "You're going too fast." Can they get away with that?
The short answer is no. What did they charge you with? What subsection?
What subsection? 3362. Am I giving you the right stuff?
Yeah, did he put a speed in there?
40 miles an hour.
In a 25?
In a 25.
And what kind of timing device? There should be an area on there for him to check what kind of timing device he used.
I don't see anything for a timing device.
He can't. He's got to have a timing device to give an exact speed. He can't just eyeball it. Well, let me put it this way: Ohio is allowing police officers to make up the speed with their eyeballs.
Okay.
But Pennsylvania hasn't gone down that road yet.
It says here CFR CNRADO. Is that the timing device?
No.
Okay. All right. That was my question.
So plead not guilty.
Yes.
Plead not guilty. And if you want a little help fighting it, let us know, and we'll be happy to come there and do it for you.
Do I have to go to the DJ's office to do this?
You don't. You can. There's instructions on the back of the ticket on how to send it in.
Oh, okay. All righty. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Bye.
540-0580. Again, we're going to keep taking your calls till 3:45. So if you haven't been able to get through yet, fire away. Shelva.
Yes. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good. I was calling about, we are probating my father's will, and it would be the settlement of an estate.
Right.
And I was wondering if you had any advice for us. The point we are at, we did probate the will, and they accepted it at the courthouse, and we got our short certificates, and we did transfer the banking account, and also the safety deposit box. We have the contents. Now, we were going to send out the notice to the beneficiaries.
Yep, you have to send notice of beneficial interest. You also need to take out mandatory advertising.
Oh, so you do have to do that mandatory?
Yep.
Okay. Just claiming, is there a form for that?
No, but there is particular language that you should have, and so while there's not a form for it, I guess you could look at another estate notice and you could see exactly what you would need in there.
Okay. Now, I'm named in the will, but it says, if something would happen to me, then my children, do I have to notify them?
No, they don't have a beneficial. They're not. We wouldn't consider them having a beneficial interest at this point.
Okay, that's what I thought. And about the inheritance tax, the percentage that we pay, my understanding is that we would get a discount on that, like a 5%.
Well, you're going to get a discount for prepaying it if you pay it within a certain number of months. It's usually 4.5% down to lineal descendants. I think they'll give you a 4% rate if you pay it on what you pay up front.
I think they told us 5. Now we're paying 4.5% because children. This is in York County,
right?
So she just said to send the check in.
Yeah, and you should usually just file. Well, what you should do is when you estimate, you can do a tax return, and then do an amended tax return later.
Oh, okay.
And there's an estate tax return. The approximate value of the estate, I assume, is far less than $1 million.
Well, we don't really know. It's a farm, so we're not really sure.
So you got to be really careful. You may have federal estate tax issues you need to be dealing with as well.
Is that when it's over $1 million?
Yeah, and so other things besides there's a complex formula for determining that too, because you have to include any life insurance products and interests like that.
Yes.
Jointly held bank accounts that might have gone to somebody else are still includable in the gross estate to certain extents.
It's relatively simple, other than the farm property and a bank account, and a few implements, that type of thing.
Right.
So it's relatively simple, I think, but I know there's a lot of paperwork.
Do you guys have an attorney working on this?
No, we don't.
Oh, bad.
Do you think that we really need one?
I think you always need an attorney because of two reasons. Number one, when that paperwork all gets filed, there's going to be a presumption that it's done correctly because an attorney did it, and you're much less likely to get audited. Number two, if you do get audited or checked out later on by Department of Revenue, you're going to have somebody there to stand beside you and talk on your behalf. And number three, if you do miss a claim or don't properly close out the estate, have you guys even figured out how you're going to close out this estate?
It's relatively new.
But how are you going to close it out? Are you going to use a family agreement, a final accounting? In other words, you got to make sure you close it out right.
Okay, there was an account status paper.
That's got nothing to do with it.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you that there's a reason why I take my car to an auto mechanic and don't do it myself, even though I can figure some stuff out. So that's all.
Do we hurt ourselves by having done what we did?
No, you haven't hurt yourself at all.
Okay.
I just think you should have somebody go over everything with you, make sure it's done right. Doesn't mean you have to pay them $1 million to do it, but particularly when you got a large piece of land that's potentially worth a lot of money, you want to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, because you don't want to run afoul of the federal estate tax either.
Okay, so at some point, if we go to a lawyer, we could just contract on an hourly basis?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any recommendations?
Well, we do them, so I would be remiss to not point that out, but be happy to help you.
Okay, and then where can I get information? On your website?
If you go to weekendappointment.com, you get my contact.
Weekend appointment, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to force anybody to use an attorney, but here's the deal. It's sort of like, remember I talked about that oil change earlier? Well, there might be something when I'm pulling off the oil filter that if I was a mechanic, I'd recognize as a problem, and I would get a bigger fix. And that's why you have somebody digging around in there. 540-0580. We're going to go off the air live now, but we're going to keep doing the bonus podcast. So Lauren, Glenn, hold on. And remember, folks, keep calling now between now and 3:45, 540-0580. I'll keep taking your calls. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. And in the meantime, if you need me or you want to hire me, go to weekendappointment.com.